G'day and welcome to Clamp, the Creating, Living and Making podcast. I'm your host Adam Mackey, and joining me as always is Grant Alexander.
Hello.
And Morley Kurt.
Hello.
What's going on, boys? I feel like we haven't talked for so long. What have you guys been doing? I know Grant has been going crazy with his Boler.
It looks so sick.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. It's getting really close to the end. I see it. It is in sight. There's like the exterior is done. I finished
it looks finished from the outside.
Yeah, well, and this is not always the way. Looks can be very deceiving. It's just so the outside looks pretty much done. There's still I gotta do a spare tire mount and license plate holder and a box for my battery and propane tank. But the paint's all done. It looks great. Turned out great. The interior is coming back together. I've filmed some fun, a fun shot today, and I just had this idea for filming where I picked up one of the seats, the seat benches, and they have a hole in them because there's storage in them. And I put the camera inside the Boler, and then I put the bench down, and the camera goes through the hole in the bench. And I just thought that it was a really cool shot. And I looked it over on the tiny GoPro, 2-inch screen. It looked great. But
Grant,
we'll see if it turns out.
When are you going to get a real camera?
Never. I don't know why I would want one.
Okay.
I'll get a real camera and then I'll immediately drop it. And it won't be a GoPro, so it'll smash into pieces.
Fair enough.
Right? I've already dropped my GoPro so many times. It's all smashed up.
Is there a way to make the GoPro not be wide angle?
I shoot in linear. It's not wide angle.
What does that even mean?
Well, it means that I can make it more wide angle if you believe it. Yeah, I know. But it's been fun. It's been a great little project. Well, I don't think I've ever done anything that I put more work into. I redid my entire kitchen, and I did that in less time than it's taken this.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. Anyways, I'm really hoping to get it done in the next week. Hopefully this weekend. Actually, it's supposed to rain all week next week, so hopefully I get it done this weekend. We're recording this on a Friday for those listening later. The other thing that happened this week, I got more free tools from my neighbor who's moving out, and I got a 300 millimeter planer, which is attached to a 150 millimeter jointer. So for those, that's what it is, because it's Makita Japanese.
12 inch and 6 inch.
Yeah, 12 inch and 6 inch. It's pretty cool though, because it's a combination tool. But what I like, so right now I have a 13 inch and a 4-inch 13-inch planer and a 4-inch jointer. I'm going to get rid of both of them and just have this. And it'll be replace, it'll make, it's a bigger, the jointer's bigger. It's also way longer. One of the things, anytime I was doing longer boards, it was a huge pain in the butt to actually get them across. So my little jointers would be great for someone who turns pens, and that's about it.
Yeah.
But
I've heard a lot of people say they upgrade the width only because it's a longer bed.
Right. So for edge jointing, it's going to be amazing. It's going to be game changing.
I really need to get one day.
Yeah. And he also gave me a dust filtration system, a Delta, hang from your ceiling giant dust filtration system. So I'm super stoked. This neighbor, I've tried to give him stuff. He won't accept any kind of payment. He won't even confirm or deny if he drinks. I found out from his daughter that he does, but he won't take do you drink beer or wine or whiskey? And he just said, don't worry about it. I went, well, that doesn't answer my goddamn question. And obviously he's a woodworker, so I can't be I'm going to make you a cutting board, because if he wants a cutting board, he knows how to make it. Right. So it's one of those weird things where I don't know what to do. So any listeners out there, if you guys got ideas of what to do for this this guy who's a retired cabinet maker he's moving to an outhouse because he wants to redo one more house before he really hangs up all the tools, and that's why he's giving away most of his tools because he doesn't need them to do the housework that he's doing, and he's keeping his lathe and I think one other tool, and he's just basically he's going to do like a lathe and scroll saw, so he's going to do like the classic old man hobbies, which are lathe and scroll sawing. But I'm sure we'll talk more about that later in the episode.
Nice. Cool. That sounds like a really great week. I have also had a pretty solid week. I feel like you said, it's been like over a week since we last talked, and I feel like it's been even more than that because the day we are recording, I just finished the first week of camp, of being the program director at this camp. And like I was talking to Adam and Grant in the pre-show, and it's like we will be debriefing at the end of the day, and we'll be talking about some like issue with a camper that happened that morning. We'll be like, wait a second, that was today? I thought that was like 3 days ago, because just so much happens in a day. And it's been great. Like the first day expectedly was like a little stressful and a little chaotic, but like no emergencies, nothing terrible happened. The day went like mostly according to plan. And we've just been kind of like, going from there, and each day has gotten easier and better, and it's going like very well. I'm super happy with the team, all the instructors that I'm working with and directing and in the program and stuff. They're all awesome. And we ran a big camp-wide like escape room a couple days ago, which this instructor, Veronica, she's like really into game design. She like designed the whole thing. So she was basically running like 8 simultaneous escape rooms, one for each cabin, which was quite the feat.
Wow.
I was telling her, you should put this on a resume, like made and ran 8 simultaneous escape rooms.
This was in one day?
Yeah.
So obviously they made them ahead of time, but
she prepared it all in like
1 day.
A bunch, like 10 of us helped her set everything up, and she filled in people on the details, and so it's like, okay, like here are some hints and things, but like she was really the only person who knew it inside and out.
Wow.
And it was really fun to see. And they've been doing some really cool projects. They did some like solar ovens and some like soldering stuff. This is kind of like the space and electricity session, like making rockets that launch with air pressure and 3D printing. I've been helping out in the workshop open activity, like the free time at the end of the day. Cause some of the counselors aren't like super comfortable leading it. So just as they get onboarded, I've been helping out and helping kids with their woodworking projects. And today, we brought in like I don't know what exactly you would call it, but like it's a laser tag service that comes to your site and sets it up. So like we have this it's at a curling club. So we have this big open space. And so they came and set up the laser tag, and the kids played laser tag. And then once all the kids left, we all played laser tag, which was super fun. It was kind of like, I was kind of like bored with the kids because I was kind of just like supervising and walking around. But then like once we started, I was like, wow, this is like so much strategy. We got super competitive.
I always found like laser tag just felt like my gun never worked.
I know what you mean.
Like when I play paintball, I'm like, I know it's working, I just suck. But laser tag, I just feel like my gun doesn't work.
You don't get the same
recoil or anything,
the same feedback.
Yeah,
but it's
they should make laser tag guns that recoil.
Yeah, they vibrate a little bit, but you're right. If they had a little bit like the arcade guns that have the slide back sort of thing, that'd be good. Yeah, but it's been just like long full days, like waking up at 6, get home at 7:30 or so, and yeah, it's just a very fulfilling first week because like I think I'm really happy with the way things are going, and it's a really nice start to the summer. But at the same time, I'm very happy to be on the weekend now.
It's hard working every day.
Yeah, and it's like with the setting of a camp, just with like the constant, there's the behavioral problems with some kids. There's like, oh, we had this activity planned outside and now it's raining, so what are we going to do? a lot of just like on the fly problem solving. And
Could you imagine doing like a stayover camp where you actually have to stay there for like a whole week?
oh, I'd love
Like
to do one. I went to
you'd be working nonstop.
Yeah, no, I'd love to do that. I went to camp for 9 years, and like as I've been
That's a long camp.
so that was a good one. Anyways, but that camp was 100 years old, and as I've been working here, I'm like, I've really appreciated how established that place is, because I was like, the fact that they were able to put on these like crazy camp-wide games and everything like ran so smoothly. Like the place I'm working now is only 6 years old, and it's really making me realize that like how long it takes to like build up like a solid program. Like it's great, but it's just like we're figuring a lot of things out.
Yeah.
But the nice thing about go on.
Aren't you also like trying to do new and innovative things? Like you're not like the camp I went to as a kid, the stayover camp I went to as a kid was like back to basics kind of training. It's a lot easier to develop. Like here, we're going to teach you how to do start a fire with just like a stone and a stick and a string, right? It's a lot easier. That doesn't change ever. Like 3D printing, that's something brand new, right?
Yeah, but at the same time, like at the camp I went to, they would do like all these like crazy camp-wide games and stuff that were very complex, and there was new stuff every year, and it still is changing. And there are a lot of advantages to running a program at a sleepaway camp, like especially because the kids aren't going home every day. So like if a kid doesn't have a great day, they're not going home to complain to their parents. They have the rest of the session to kind of like make up for it. So it makes it kind of easier. We were talking about this today. It makes it a little easier to sleepaway camp to like, have a great session looking back. Everything looks a lot better in hindsight if you spent 2 weeks solid there versus if you're going home every day.
Is it the same kids every day for 2 weeks?
Yes. And then some of them will come back for the other sessions. So there's 4 sessions total for the summer. I don't know what the proportion is of returning versus new campers. We'll see.
Right, but it's a 2 week blocks is what you're saying.
Exactly. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
I would have loved to do like a maker camp when I was growing up.
Yeah, these kids, I mean, that's what a lot of the parents say. That's why they're sending their kids there, is like, oh, I wish I had this when I was a kid. And also their kids just like love making stuff and 3D printing and coding and everything else.
Yeah.
I couldn't even imagine, like, if I was a kid, I think, like there's these videos of people just like 3D printing something for an hour, and it's like got, hundreds of thousands of views on YouTube, and you're like, how? I'm like, well, because when I was a kid, I would have stood there and looked at that for an hour, right?
Yeah.
Like as an adult, I'm like, no, I get it. It like plops the plastic on it. Okay, go. Like,
yeah, no, we have the 3D printers like in a closet because they do exactly that. They'll just stand there and stare at them, and it's a big distraction.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's even like now you're like, how do some of these channels have so many views on YouTube of like kids playing with toys and stuff? I'm like, well, I suppose when I was a kid, I probably would have liked that too.
Yeah, how much?
But like,
I mean, I don't know if you guys have older siblings, but like, I spent so many hours watching my brother play video games as a kid.
Me too, and that's where everyone goes like, Twitch, what's that the thing? And I'm like, no, that was my life. And I had to watch my brother play, not someone good at games.
Yeah.
And then you play it yourself, and it's not as fun.
It isn't. No, I and then when I went to university, I remember like Morrowind was a thing. And that's like a long game. And I just remember spending hours just sitting behind a friend of mine in our dorm room, and he'd just play Morrowind. And he would play it, and then I went to go play it, and I was just like always over encumbered because I was stealing everything. And I just couldn't move. And I was like, this game sucks.
I've gone through phases.
All the pillows.
I've gone through phases of watching people play like Minecraft, and then I play it, and I'm just like 10 minutes in, I'm like, I'm bored. There's nothing to do. Like, it's crazy.
Yeah.
Anyway, so what have I done this week? I put out a new video making a fence for my table saw. Well, upgrading. I said in the video that I was upgrading it, but I never showed the old one. So essentially, I just made one. But anyway, and that has actually worked out really well. I kind of like took the design of what I see like a saw stop fence is. I don't know what they actually look like. I've never seen one in real life, but what I've seen in videos looks like a bar down the middle with like 2 pieces of wood on the sides. So pretty much that's what I made. Yeah, and it's worked out really good. It's really sturdy. And, yeah.
I think it looked great, and you mentioned the video you had like the wood grain direction the wrong way. I think this is a great spot for plywood.
For sure. I ended up using 2x4, which like worked really good. I didn't show it in the video because I didn't record actually making that part, but I actually used the miter saw to notch out like a mortise for the bar to fit in on the 2x4. So it wasn't like a thin, just like individual piece that could snap. It was like the whole 2x4 was still intact.
Wait, you used a miter saw to notch it out, so you didn't cut to full depth? You used it like a radial arm saw?
So miter saws, I have yet to find one that doesn't have the feature, but have a trenching feature. So there's a nut you can turn that'll actually stop how far down it can go.
I've always thought that would be a useful feature and assumed it did, but I don't think I've ever found it or like needed it enough that I found it.
Now I think about it, it's probably only a feature on sliding miter saws because if you have
those are all the
sliding, there wouldn't be a point. Yeah, if you look on the side, there'll probably be one on there.
Okay, that's useful. So I guess that feature kind of makes it just as useful as a radial arm saw, except it doesn't have as long of a range of motion.
You can get them to have as long a range of motion. The problem is a radial arm saw can take a dado, and it can move sideways to rip boards.
Yeah.
Right.
Which is the scariest thing to do, but
a radial arm saw is more like the opposite. If you turn a table saw upside down and use that, and actually move the blade instead of the
a sliding miter saw has made a radial arm saw completely obsolete.
Yeah,
in my opinion.
Yeah,
unless you're Pat Lap.
So yeah, turned out pretty good. It's really sturdy. I did have a couple of comments asking me how sturdy it was because I didn't show any videos of actually cutting anything. Which, to be honest, I kind of threw the video together because I didn't realize it'd been 2 weeks since I put out my last video, and I kind of gave myself a push to try and get out a video every 2 weeks. So I was like, I need to get this done. I just didn't have the footage for it. But yeah, so pretty happy with that. And then other than that, I have been CNC shopping. I got a quote for the CNC, which is looking at about $1,900. And then I need to buy a router and a few other bits and pieces. So in the end, I'm going to be like $2,500 down on a CNC. But I'm pretty excited for that because I have a lot of business ideas.
Nice.
But yeah, so in saying that, I've been watching videos on like how to set up CNCs and all this stuff and all that, and it really got me just thinking of things that I can actually accomplish with a CNC. Wow. Great.
So disrespectful, Grant.
I was trying to share the story that my phone...
The funny thing is he's watching the Clamp story on Instagram.
Yes. Adam shared something on the Clamp story, and then I was like, oh, I'll post it on mine because he did it while the show was going. So I was like, perfect timing. It's recording time. But I didn't realize it had audio until I went to share it, and then the audio turned on.
Wow.
Sorry about that.
Anyway, no, good. So yeah, I've been thinking of like things I can use it for, and it really got me to the point of thinking, like, although I call myself a woodworker, I don't really call myself a woodworker. I'm more of a maker. Is that I would more than happily just cut every piece I need on a CNC and assemble it. Because to me, the fun isn't the process of like milling timber and all that. To me, the process is putting it together, like building with Lego sort of thing. And yeah, so it just really got me thinking of like things I can actually accomplish with a CNC. Like I just made this tabletop. I could just chuck it on the CNC and flatten it, rather than sanding it down the whole time and all that. And yeah, so in saying that, what do you guys, if you guys had a CNC, what would you use it for? I'm curious.
I'd use it for selling to get money to buy non-digital fabrication tools. No, I don't know. I think if I had a CNC, the only thing I'd really use it for is like downloading other people's stuff and then cutting it out.
Okay.
Because I think what I like, or making repeatable stuff. Like if I really needed to make a bunch of something, but I make a lot of one-off stuff. So I find a CNC, while it can be useful, and we can talk about that more later on why a CNC can be very useful for lots of things. I find that it would take up a lot of room and wouldn't do what I want, like that room to do.
Okay.
I would love one. If I had all the space, I would want a CNC for sure. Like you're talking about flattening a slab of wood instead of like building a router sled and doing it. A CNC would make my life so much easier, right? But
yeah, I think with me it's more of like the precision is what I think about when I think of a CNC.
Right.
Like yes, repeatable, but also like if I need to cut something out, like say I want to make, I've talked about it before, but I want to make a TARDIS. I've decided to make it a benchtop version, and cutting like the side of a TARDIS, I feel be so much better for me just to chuck it on a CNC rather than try and cut out all the windows so they're all symmetrical and perfect. Because I'm honestly like that doesn't interest me. I don't have fun in trying to make things perfect.
Well, and this is where like I built that simple stop block thing system for my miter saw. As soon as you have a stop block that's easily changed, like repeatable cuts aren't a problem.
Exactly. Yeah.
But I get where you're coming from. It would be very nice if you just put it in the computer. I'd like to make 15 of these, and especially with plywood, and it just goes and you walk away. And well, I think the big thing with like CNCs or other digital fabrication, like 3D printers like Morley has, or a laser, is that I know myself. I will not look at it, and it will burn my house down.
Yeah.
Yeah, Adam, I think I kind of agree with you. That's interesting the way you said like the thing you enjoy is the assembly. And I think that for me, like that is some of the most satisfying parts of builds. But I don't know if I would want to like take out all the other parts. Because I think part of what makes it satisfying is that you've had all these processes that have led up to that.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, if I had a CNC, I would definitely enjoy making like different types of modular furniture, like very similar to like the way Ben Ueda uses his. I would see myself using mine in a very similar way. Just I think it's nice not to. Oh, I thought I was going to sneeze. I might still sneeze. It's nice not to have to figure out like how you're going to cut something and make it. If you can just know that it's going to be cut right and focus on the design, I think that's the part that is the most appealing to me. When you don't have to think about like, even with 3D printing, like when you're doing any 3D printing, you have to think about how is this going to be printed? Are there overhangs? Does there have to be support material? And so whenever you have like those to me are all just like wasted thoughts. If I didn't have to think about those things, that would be great. That to me is just like a useless artifact of the process. And the less I have to think about things like that, I think the better in terms of my making. Yeah. However, that being said, when you were talking about the TARDIS and making the windows, it got me thinking a bit about prop making and sometimes figuring out like different ways to do like the windows on the side of a TARDIS, for example, is kind of fun. Like, I don't know what the name of it is, like bric-a-brac or whatever. Like when you make something out of like random found materials, and that whole process in itself can be a little fun, but unless you're really good at it and you have a lot of experience, it can also just be very frustrating.
Yeah, it just gives me a lot of anxiety. I've made a little lamp before of a TARDIS, and cutting out the windows and stuff like was just anxiety. Like I hated it.
But I think a lot of the things are you get better the more you do them. Yeah. And it's the mileage you put on whatever you're doing. The more mileage you have, the better you're going to get at it. Right? I think I was listening to Dave Swiduck's podcast because I've been of course, listening to like 8-hour podcasts a day because of the ridiculousness of working on this stupid Boler. And he was talking about like creativity and stuff, and it's like you gotta use those muscles and you gotta do it every day. And he was talking about how he journals every day. And that's like a thing he does to try and keep his creativity muscles working. And I think it's the same with everything. The more you do it, it's just like when you see someone who's a master working at the CNC and you look at someone who's just got their CNC and you look at what they can do and you just go, how are you even doing that? Like when I think of Bernie Solo's entry into the Because We Make Enlighten Us challenge with his like crazy way he made that lamp by hooking up a circular saw to his CNC, I just go like, wow, who would have ever thought of that? Like, it's insanity to me.
Yeah. I think we've talked about this before, and it does come down a lot to interest as well, though. Like, yeah, okay, there's the joy of finding different ways to do things, but to me, like, honestly, it just doesn't interest me. Like, I would rather just get the part done on a CNC. In saying that, though, like, I wouldn't cut out everything on a CNC. Like, if you were to go back to the drawers that I made, the consumable cabinet thing that I made, I wouldn't just build that on a CNC, get it to route out all the mortises and everything. I would still do all that the way I did. But what I guess I sort of mean more just for the precision, because I do enjoy doing it that way. But when you come down to things that need to be precise and look good, I think that's where like I have issues.
Yeah, I totally understand what you're saying. Like you take out the anxiety-inducing parts of making sure that this slot matches up just right with the other parts, and you know that it's all going to be dead on as long as your setup is good, and then you can focus on the parts that you enjoy doing.
Yeah, for sure. And in saying that again, being a content creator is, I can't just chuck everything up on a CNC and be like, hey, I've got all these parts, I'll just cut out on a CNC, watch me put it together. Like, I need to show like processes of actually doing stuff as well. But it's, I don't know, it is really going to help me a lot with, mainly I think I'm going to be using it for flattening and also cutting boards to sell.
So whenever I think of digital tools, be it lasers or CNCs or 3D printers, or even for Crickets are CNCs, technically speaking, I always think of like the alternative method of doing it, because it was always like almost all of these things were done by hand. Like nobody went with a laser and was like cutting things with a laser, but people were cutting similar shapes that you could with a laser. They were doing it either with, scroll saws or jeweler saws, or
for sure,
X-Acto knives for vinyl. And I think a lot of people don't like the digital tools because they don't feel it's handmade anymore. And I wondered what you guys' thoughts were on that.
I hate that. I hate when people say that. I mean, in saying that, if you were to buy, like, we bought a sign once online of like literally someone just put a piece of MDF in a laser cutter, cut out the sign, and then shipped it to us. Okay, that's not handmade. But if you're using it to cut out pieces to then make something, like assemble something, or even how a lot of furniture makers use it is they'll cut out like a template, a routering template, to then attach to hardwood to then like route out so they have like a straight edge, the right shape and everything. That's still making to me. But yeah, I don't know. It annoys me when people say you didn't make that because you used a CNC.
I agree. But I think there's a little something to it. It is different. It's a different skill.
It is, but I mean, you're using... It essentially, to me, it's just a tool. Like, if you were to cut a sticker on a Cricut, did you not make the sticker because the Cricut did all the work? Like...
Right. Well, that's where I wonder. I think that's where it comes down to, is a lot of people think that, like, if I were to cut a sticker on a Cricut, that I downloaded everything and popped it on and I just pressed make sticker. And I know that's not true. right? Like, I know there's a lot more to it than like, I don't like go, can you please make a sticker for me, Mr. Cricket? Right.
Yeah.
And it pops out a sticker for me, or, whatever vinyl to go on a shirt. Or I know there's a lot more work to it, but I think the
Yeah.
people who aren't in it think it's the same with any type of work. As soon as you're in front of a computer, people devalue that work as not being work.
Yeah, actually, thinking back to that is, people don't think of like what goes on in the background. Like if I was to make this TARDIS, which I do actually plan on doing, it's going to be hours and hours of work designing it in Fusion, getting every dimension correct, and all that. Like that to me is still making. And I'm going to retract what I said about the person with the laser cutter, because they did make the sign, because they would have had to do the digital work to get it to say what it needed to say, and all the dimensions in it. So they did make it.
I think we live in a day and age where digital fabrication and just efficient ways of producing things are so widespread and used that if you're marketing something as handmade, then it just falls into a different category altogether. So when I think about like digital fabrication has a lot of uses because for things that need to be really precise. Like if you think about like building cladding systems, or if you look at like a sign on like a really high end office building or whatever, like no one made that sign by hand. That sign was cut out with lasers and CNCs and everything else. And
Well, today, but back in the day, they would have done it
sure,
without it.
But let's talk about today, because people still make handmade goods today, and you could go out of your way and get a fully handmade shaker style credenza. I don't even know if that's a thing, but I just combined a few terms. You could get any sort of handmade craft that you wanted. But in like every category of goods, there's a way that people are doing it in a like very efficient or efficient way, or a way that's using digital fabrication tools. But I think a lot of the time, consumers or whoever is buying these things or really cares about them in the end are more concerned about like, what is the final effect of the product? Like, how does it feel quality wise? Is it like, I guess when I'm thinking about this, I'm thinking of like a massive conference table. And when someone's buying something like that, if they want a big slab or something, I don't think they'll care if it's flattened by a CNC or if you did it all with a hand plane, as long as it's the effect that they want. And I think, and for that reason, I think like most people wouldn't be too concerned about splitting or, like, was it made with digital fabrication tools or not? Because usually people who care, like, it will be very obvious if it's handmade, if that makes sense.
Totally.
Yeah, for sure. I think two things is, you keep saying handmade, and I think there's a difference between handmade and custom made. And so if I was to like make something on a CNC, I wouldn't consider it handmade. I have made it and it's custom to what I've told it to do, and it's custom made, but I haven't made it by hand. I haven't done all the work with my hands. And in going on that, I think a lot of people that buy handmade stuff, they want to see the stuff that isn't correct, if that makes sense. Like,
Yeah, for sure.
They want to see the defects and all that sort of stuff, like the straight cut that's not straight, and because that's what makes it handmade.
I have a question. What do you use on your keyboard and mouse, Adam?
My
toes.
Your toe. So it's toe made. I get you. No, so that's the thing. Like, so I think the big thing has to do with whether or not it's kind of like, is it craft beer, or is it like beer that's mass produced? And people want stuff that's craft, that's local, that's designed in house, that's done small batch. People like that. All those words are like buzzwords for marketing, right? But it's like, that's what they're looking for when they see when they hear handmade, they expect it you made it. Like if you're selling it, it's like either you made it or someone like you put together a bunch of handmade, like bunch of vendors that are supplying your store, and they're all people actually the ones making it, not shipping it off to China, not shipping it off to some factory who doesn't give a crap, or even a factory that gives lots of craps. It doesn't matter. They want to know, is it made by someone local and small? And that's what handmade says to me.
Mm-hmm.
Right? But I know a lot of the clothing I wear is likely handmade in some third world country in a sweatshop. Like, I'm sure these t-shirts aren't made, like the t-shirts I get in beer for free are probably not made at some high-end, right, fully paid, like, place. Like,
oh no, then they wouldn't
so
be
this
giving
is
it away
where
for
I
free.
go, I don't know. What?
Then they wouldn't be giving it away for free.
Right, exactly. I don't know.
I want to work on that point. So, just to bring him up because we do every episode, Jimmy DeResta, for instance, makes his ice picks that are handmade ice picks that he sells online. If he came out straight away and said, "I'm going to sell these ice picks. They're made in a factory overseas. They cost this much, whatever," do you think people would have bought them in as much success as they did, knowing they weren't handmade?
Grant, I know what you're going to say.
He talked about it on making it, and he said,
I know he's talked about doing it.
No, he actually tried it. He put them up for sale, and he put them up for sale for cheaper, and everyone gave him crap and wouldn't buy them and said, "No, I don't 100%. Want them."
Exactly.
Right. And he also talks about how he doesn't even hand make them. Like, it's not him most of the time, but people's like, whatever.
But they are handmade just because they're not by him.
Right. Yeah. But I pay that extra money for Jimmy DeResta to touch my stuff.
I pay that extra money to have Jimmy DeResta's fingerprint on my ice pick.
Exactly. So then I can log into his phone by cloning the fingerprint off the ice pick.
So this is someone I've talked about in the past, Dom Rico Bean. It's at dom.ricobean on Instagram. And he's like an artist and designer. So one of the people on Instagram who does the most like amazing things with digital fabrication tools. He'll like 3D print a LiDAR scan of a landscape and then CNC it into like a more refined version of that and then do some crazy animation with it. I think one of his recent projects was he created the whole GTA 5 map.
What?
It's insane. And this is a guy like that I think is totally outside of this conversation we're having where like, yes, there's the whole like handmade crafts. And if someone is making CNC cardboard and selling that across fair, is it like unethical or, how are they marketing it? But then there's also all the people who are doing things with CNCs with no thoughts of even like mass producing items. It's just more about like all the different opportunities these things open up. And that's something I think is really interesting as well. Like, I think, and let's not even talk about art. Let's talk about like interior design pieces or something. Like, people don't always care if something is made by hand. If it's like, as long as like the thought behind it and the uniqueness of it comes through, like a lot of like art pieces and things like, they were made with machines, but that's not like the selling point of them. The selling point is like the idea behind it and the execution. And even if it was made with a CNC, there's still clearly an incredible amount of time and attention that went into it.
Yeah. That the map thing is something I'm definitely interested in and something I definitely want to get into because like I wouldn't do that by hand. There's no way. Like that's something that I definitely would need a CNC for, and that's something that I'm interested to do with a CNC. And in saying that, it comes down to the precision, and the reason why I have a Cricut rather than cut vinyl by hand is for the precision.
Yeah.
Right. And I think Jimmy talks about a lot like font. Font is something that like it matters. When you're trying to replicate something, a CNC or a vinyl cutter or a laser or even a 3D printer, it matters. When you're trying to replicate a font or anything else, it matters so much. But otherwise, I think it's fun to see how people do it. It's like when you see someone draw a cartoon of someone's logo, and to bring up Pat Lapp again, like somebody drew like Pat Lapp as a cartoon, and now it's like his profile picture, I think, on Instagram. But it's like you see, it's like an impression of it.
Yeah.
And I guess this is like one of those things. It's like, are you looking for precision or are you looking for art? And you can do both. And I'm not trying to say they're mutually exclusive, but if you're trying to get something precise, sometimes CNCs are going to be more efficient for sure. If you're going to replicate something, CNCs are going to be more efficient. But if you want to get the feeling for something, then I feel like there's a lot more emotion in using manual tools.
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah, for sure. And it's also sometimes just a better way of doing it and like problem solving. Like when I was making my cardboard chair, it took drawing it out like 5 times and testing it out to see if it was a comfortable chair shape before moving on. Like it's sometimes just about analog is an easier way to do something. Like a couple of days ago at camp, it rained really hard and it was the first rainy day we had at camp. And so I went outside to turn on the speaker in the morning because we have like music going in the tent and we have a microphone hooked up. And after like 5 seconds of playing, it popped the breaker in the box outside.
Oh no.
And so we figured out that a little bit of water had gotten into the outdoor outlet. And it's one of the great things about camp this year, and as they've expanded, we now have like a workshop manager. He's like workshop assistant, workshop manager. It's an awesome guy named Abel who's like graduate of industrial design, and he's great at like making and designing, really handy in the shop. He's kind of like he has the same.
Sounds like he's really able.
Damn it! You stole my joke. I was waiting for the opportunity.
He actually has this kind of similar job that I did at the lodge. He's kind of like the maintenance guy, and I'm a little jealous of him for it because it's a fun job. But anyways, I was like, Abel, we need some cover over this outlet. Like, I feel like you could just like, and I was telling him about like what we needed. I was like,
are you able to make one?
Yeah, I was like, you could just take like a piece of plastic and like slide it over because it just needs to be like a little sheath. And he was saying, yeah, I could probably also like design something on the laser cutter and cut it out like a little bit of roof thing. I was like, yep, that would totally work. But I also just think like a piece of plastic would be totally fine. So like whatever you want to do, but this is what I'm thinking. And he ended up literally just taking like a rigid plastic like salad container, like what you get the spring mix in at the grocery store, and cutting a slot in it and putting over top. And it worked perfectly. And he could have designed something on the laser cutter and cut it out in acrylic and it would have been all pretty and everything else. But for something like that, just cutting up some plastic like worked absolutely perfectly.
So one other thing with the CNC that I find interesting is Beverly's Creations does it a lot. I'm sure a lot of people do. Is like if he makes a drawer front, he'll put it in the CNC and actually create like some sort of design that he cuts out on the CNC, like little hills that are like lifted up sort of thing, and it just adds a bit of change to it. So I just wanted to say that, but I wanted to say I think with like a laser cutter, if you had the opportunity to throw it to Morley a little bit with your leather work and all that sort of stuff, I think, and especially I think for myself as well, if I got into leatherworking, is that I would definitely be more hands-on with leatherworking as opposed to getting a laser cutter to cut out all the shapes of the leather and engrave it and everything compared to the work you do now.
You're saying you would cut them out by hand, but you would engrave it, or you would do it all in the laser?
No, I'm saying I would actually prefer to do it the way you do it rather than use a laser.
Yeah, I would probably agree there because it smells when you cut it on the laser.
Well, not the smell, but just the what to me the interest is actually like making the 3D parts and make the impression and stuff.
For sure, but it does smell and it does detract from the experience. And so rather than dealing with a smelly, and it makes the whole thing smell, right? Because it burns the edges and that smell sticks around. And I agree, like cutting it by hand is a very nice, relaxing experience and part of the process that I really enjoy. So I wouldn't want to substitute that with digital fabrication. I think I would prefer to just get better at making templates. Actually, the 3D printed templates is like a wonderful middle ground there because like you have the precision of the templates but you're still doing it all by hand. And so it's like the perfect
Which
mixture
throws
of
it back
the
to
two
what
for
I
me.
was saying about making a router jig for like making furniture parts.
Yeah, yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
I think this is one of those things where you just look at it and go, you can combine the two, and it's the best of both worlds. But back in the day, before all this, people were still doing that,
Oh, yeah,
right?
for sure.
They were just relief carving into some in wood and then stamping that into. It's just like it was like. It's like why you see like machinists that for some reason still use like the hand stamped, like broken, they're never level like lettering. And it's like,
Oh, not for some reason, because it looks awesome.
okay, we all have our things.
No, but like that, I think some people, myself included, really like that look of like it's a very clear handmade signature.
Right.
In the same way that like when you see the sawmill marks on wood, it's the same sort of thing. Like some people really like that look.
Sure. What I'm saying about is they spend all this time machining to like 0.00001 of an inch, and then they go kunk with a hammer, and you just go, yeah, and you didn't bother lining up or nothing. It's like they've spent. It's these machinists that I go, why are you're spending so much time?
I'll tell you exactly why. It's what I was saying before, right? Like, so in this day and age where it's accepted that like most consumer goods are made with digital fabrication, when the handmade aspects come into it, they have to be very obvious. And so like people want to see like, oh, this is a handmade part, even though the rest of it is like very precisely made. It's like the Japanese term. I can't remember what it's called, but
that's actually a really good point, but
I'll look it up. It's basically the mixture of like something that's slightly imperfect, like a mixture of imperfections with something that's like really, really clean. And it's like a philosophy, like a lot of Japanese words. It's like a philosophy and an art and an aesthetic all in one. And I'm going to try to, you guys keep talking. I'm going to try.
Well,
oh wait, Eden just yelled it out. What is it? It's wabi sabi. That's what it is.
Oh yeah.
So I'm going to look it up. I'm going to look it up real quick. So wabi sabi, it's a worldview centered on the acceptance of transience and imperfection. The aesthetic is sometimes described as one of appreciating beauty that is imperfect, impermanent, and incomplete in nature. So if you just Google image search wabi sabi, I think that's a much better way to appreciate what I'm talking about.
I'm with you, and I get that. I just kind of look at it and go like, I don't know. Maybe I just kind of look at it and go, why? Just like, you got all the tools to do it right. Why are you doing it wrong?
I think I've already said my answer, so I won't say anything more.
No, I agree. I get it. I just think to myself, why? But I also think like, like there's this guy in Ottawa or just outside of Ottawa who's a wood carver. He does it all by hand, and he does stuff that I think would make someone using a CNC like shit themselves on how to even do it, right?
Yeah.
And I'll put a link in so that you can go on, you can go online and see this guy. He's the Noble Wood Carver, and he did like the Ashton Brewing Company logo, all hand carved, hand painted, and it just blows my mind what he was able to do and how close.
Wow.
Like, I could not ever
That's hand
think
carved.
Hand carved. So everyone go in the show notes. You'll see this.
What?
Like, I don't even think like a CNC would be that great at doing this.
That's insane. That's so well done. Yeah. I mean, that though, he's skilled in that though. Like, that's not the first sign he's ever made. Like,
of course not. But what I'm saying is, you don't need a CNC to do it.
No, you definitely don't. To me, a CNC
stuff.
is an aid.
Totally.
I mean,
I just like a lot of people look at stuff and go, I can't do that because I don't have a CNC. I don't have a laser cutter. I don't have an X, Y, and Z. My thing of the week is someone who made a sign that everyone will look at and go, well, that had to be made with a CNC or a laser right now. And they use just a scroll saw.
Yeah.
Right? And I look at it and go, exactly. You can do it. Just do it.
Yeah.
Don't ever say the tool is holding you back or not having the tool is holding you back.
to me, CNC just makes life easier. Like we said before, you can just throw a slab on and flatten it rather than make a router jig. Same as a table saw is easier than a hand saw or a circular saw, or yeah. Anyway,
Totally.
let's move on to Clampmendations.
Clampmendations.
So my Clampmendation this week is going to be someone I found on Instagram. He has a YouTube channel as well named Larry Lawton. Now, I've opened up his Wikipedia because I'm really bad at explaining who people are. But Larry Lawton is an American ex-convict, author, motivational speaker, and YouTuber. Lawton gained notoriety for committing a string of jewelry store robberies along the Atlantic seaboard prior to his arrest in 1996. He spent 11 years in prison and once released began a career as a motivational speaker, life coach, and author. I am extremely into real true crime stories and documentaries and all sorts of stuff. And his Instagram and YouTube is just full of him telling like his stories of like how he robbed a place. There's YouTube videos of him going to like the place he robbed 25 years ago that's now turned into a laundromat, and he like talks about how they planned it out and all this stuff. And I just, to me, it's just so interesting. So
that is interesting.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, he was part of the mob and everything.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, mine is a completely different direction than that. It's Rory from RLL Woodworks and his Yanko Chevelle sign. I've seen it on Instagram. He's done it, and he also put up a YouTube Shorts. So we'll link in the YouTube Shorts video. But it's done completely without any kind of digital fabrication assistance, and it's a really cool 3-dimensional like garage sign with a car, and I love cars, so go check that out. Go check out Rory. He's a good guy, and he's got a great Instagram and YouTube.
Nice.
Yeah, that looks really cool. Sorry, I didn't realize I was muted. And then I had my hand on the wrong mouse and I tried to unmute myself.
All right, to take it in another completely different direction, I have a music recommendation for this week. It's a single song, and it's so good. I've listened to it like tens of times in the past weeks, and it's the Love Renaissance Cypher. Oh, I just closed out of the tab. But if anyone's doesn't know the term, a cypher is basically like it started playing. It's basically like a rap freestyle in a group of rappers. They'll like go off of one another. There's usually like quick breaks in between. And it's just like
know that.
An amazing collection of like young up and coming artists. Love Renaissance is a record label. And all these artists are affiliated with them, most notably West Side Boogie, who's like relatively well known on his own. I didn't even realize I knew him already, but he had an album a few years ago that's called Thirst 48, which I realized I listened to a lot, but I totally forgot about him. So it's super good. The music video is also really fun. And it's just one of those songs I listen to like with a big smile, because I'm like, wow, these are like some really talented people and they're not very well known yet. And I can tell they're going to do really big things. It's really cool. It's like one of my favorite types of songs, ciphers. Anyone's interested in another good one, the Beast Coast Cypher in their promotion of their album Escape from New York is really good, as well as the Flatbush Zombies Better Off Dead Cypher. Those are, kind of the same camp of artists, but I'll link those both in the show notes because I really enjoy them as well.
The only cipher I know is from The Matrix.
Yeah. Or the Da Vinci Code.
I never saw that.
All right. Well, usually we would read out reviews. If you don't know, if you leave us a review, Morley will read it out, trying to do your accent from where you're from. But if we don't have that, we have my Australian word of the week. Now, I'm going to ask if you know this word first, because it really surprises me, some of these words that you wouldn't know. Do you know what a stubby is?
Like a small beer bottle?
Yeah,
I'm
okay,
thinking like
that's
a
what-
short
No,
cigar.
it's a small beer bottle. All right, so I'll have it back up. So my word of the week is Sanger. Sanger.
Singer.
Sanger.
Oh.
Sang.
When you first said it, I was thinking like Singa, like the Thai beer brand, but I'm guessing it has nothing to do with that.
No.
Can you spell it again?
Sanger.
Like Sanger. Don't we know someone with last
As in
name
like
Sanger?
someone sang and then er on the end.
It makes me think of like Stinger, like, oh, I just stepped on a sanger and it hurt my foot. Or like that was a real sanger. Like it also makes me think of like Zinger, like a good joke. But I'm probably way off.
I got
No
nothing. I
guesses
go
from
to
Grant?
Sanger, like somebody who.
You want a hint?
Yeah, let's get a little
It-
hint in here.
It's food.
It is a noun.
It's food.
Is it a noun?
Yes.
It's a noun,
Wait. What's a noun
like
again?
an object.
A person,
Yeah,
place,
yeah,
or
yeah,
thing.
yeah. It's a noun. Yeah.
Like a
I
hot
definitely
dog.
thought-
I'm gonna go with a hot dog.
I
Ooh,
think it
that's-
is a Sanger. It's a. I'm gonna say it's like a. It's a sandwich with a lot of meat in it.
Oh,
just-
that's a good one.
It's just a sandwich.
Oh,
It's
okay,
a
that makes
sandwich.
sense.
Yeah.
I like that.
Any
That's a good.
sandwich,
That's a good
okay.
word. A sanger.
Yeah.
I like
Cool.
it.
I like it.
Or as
Wow,
Rachel Ray would say, a Sammy.
Yeah, we call it a Sammy.
Yeah, right. Anyway.
So do you know what a stubby is, Morley?
Yeah, like a short
a-
beer bottle.
Yeah, like Red
I
Stripe.
thought that
has
would be a
stubbies.
universal term.
So
Yep.
it's more Canadian, but like in America, I think they had the taller beer bottles quicker than other places.
Yeah.
Yeah, those bigger portion sizes in America.
And then like a stubby holder is a canned koozie.
Oh no,
Oh.
I didn't know that.
I guess
Yeah.
so.
Well, stubby holder is a canned koozie, whatever you want to call it. Anyway, moving on. I want to thank our Patreon supporters. If you don't know, we have Patreon, patreon.com/clamp. Anyone who signs up to our Patreon gets access to the pre-show and after-show, and also gets a handmade keychain by our one and only Morley Kurt. Yeah, they're handmade because he doesn't have a laser cutter. It still would be anyway. Anyway, handmade, keychain by Morley Kurt. Again, you can find that at patreon.com/clamp. And yes, we are so thankful for all our Patreons over there.
Yes.
Also want to thank TF Turning for our theme music. And you can find us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter at Clampcast on Instagram, right? I don't know.
Yeah.
It's been a while. It's been a while since I had to read that out. And then also we are on YouTube. So if you want to see our beautiful faces while we are recording, we put our.
If you want to see
episodes
my
on-
really bad
on
lighting, you can see it there.
Well, I have
You'd like
a
to see
window
my
shining on my
beautiful
face. Yeah.
I put a whole bunch of money and time into lighting.
And yet
Just
he
for
still
this.
won't turn down the headlights on the BMW.
I do. It's at like 25%.
Yeah, wow. Okay.
You want to see it? You want to see it like a lot, way more? Because
Yeah,
it gets
if you want to see it,
intense.
go to YouTube and search Adam Morley Kurt, Adam Morley Grant. Oh, that's not that bad.
It was
But you can't
intense
tell
for a
that they're
second, but
circles
then
now. The
the
camera
white balance
adjusted.
kind of like accommodated for
Yeah,
it.
Yeah, but it doesn't like it still shines too bright.
yeah.
Shines
yeah, if
brightly
you search,
like a diamond.
Adam Morley Grant Clamp on YouTube, you'll find us. Hopefully, we can get to 100 subscribers soon, so we can get our custom URL. And we'll see you next time.
See you.
Goodbye. Thank you
See
very
you.
much for joining us.
We're going to the after show.
Millennials are
Actually,
so 10 years ago.
in saying that, whatever happened to generations being like 10 years? Like, I'm a 90s kid or an 80s kid. Like, now it's all like you're a boomer or a millennial or Gen X. Like it used to
Right.
be the century you were born in.
The
Century.
decade.
I think we're a little
Decade?
past there.
You know what I mean?
All right.